time. We do have some breaking news coming in here. Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social. He has said this: Khamenei, one of the most evil people in history, is dead. This is not only justice for the people of Iran, but for all great Americans and those people from many countries throughout the world that have been killed or mutilated by Khamenei and his gang of bloodthirsty thugs. He was unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems, and working closely with Israel, there was not a thing he or the other leaders that have been killed along with him could do. This is the single greatest chance for the Iranian people to take back their country. We are hearing that many of the IRGC, military and other security and police forces no longer want to fight and are looking for immunity from us. As I said last night, now they can have immunity. Later, they only get death. Hopefully, the IRGC and police will peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots and will work together as a unit to bring back the country to the greatness it deserves. The process should soon be starting in that not only the death of Khamenei, but the country has been in only one day very much destroyed and even obliterated. The heavy and pinpoint bombing, however, will continue uninterrupted throughout the week or as long as necessary to achieve our objective of peace throughout the Middle East and indeed the world. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Wow. Bombshell stuff here. Let me just give you some of these points, Manny. As an Iranian here sitting on our panel, I'd love to get your thoughts. There's a few things to get into. Perhaps let's go with the thing that I think is possibly the biggest part of the story, which is Trump is confirming here that the supreme leader of Iran, of the Islamist regime at least, Khamenei, has been killed. This is confirmation, at least from the President of the United States. How do you feel, and what do you think the reaction of Iranian people will be?
Every Iranian had this dream in his life, in his or her life, to see the day that Khamenei is dead. And I think the biggest tragedy would have been that Khamenei would die like Stalin or Mao Zedong. They were in power and then they were killed. They weren't killed. The thing about this war is, we should understand this not only from a perspective of missiles or nuclear. This is a philosophical war. Those who love life and those who love death. Those who want to live peacefully and those who want to be in war eternally. And the point that the great guest made about Iran and Israel are natural allies. They were at the time of the Shah. Even Cyrus the Great, 2,000 years ago, he was the person who freed the Jewish people to have their own religion. And then that's why Benjamin Netanyahu called Donald Trump Cyrus the Great of our time. And then this Islamic Republic is just unnatural to Iran. If it was like Afghanistan or some other countries in the Middle East, we wouldn't have any point in history to say, see, in this part in history, this country was great, had high economic growth, women had voting rights before Switzerland, and then suddenly this happened. You had a time that Iran was a successful country, a prosperous country, a friend of the West. Nixon said in his memoirs that I trusted the Shah like an advisor. And then suddenly we have this regime that wants to fight with everyone.
Is there a bit of wishful thinking here from President Donald Trump in saying that we have indications the IRGC want to lay down their arms? I don't think so. I mean, they are a very nasty bunch, aren't they? There's about 250,000 of them. They are, in fact, the full-scale army of Iran. And I think it'll take more than Donald Trump saying, I'll be nice to you if you give up your arms, for them to give up. Right. I think he's got a major battle on his hands to beat them.
Interesting stuff here, Jane. Of course, the other bombshell side of this Truth Social post is that Donald Trump is declaring that they will continue to pinpoint bomb, they call it pinpoint bombing, he does at least, heavily over the week, uninterrupted, or as he, in quotes, as long as necessary to achieve our objective of peace throughout the Middle East, indeed the world.
Yes, and we've heard Donald Trump say that it was a joint Israeli-US action, and I'm sure they have targeted military facilities where they suspect missile sites, all of these sort of logistics hubs, places that will damage the regime and make it impossible for them to continue to launch attacks on neighbouring countries, including Bahrain. And I think it's appropriate this evening to mention our armed forces, the men and women who have been involved in action today.
Not very much, though.
Not as much, but thankfully. But
yeah.
the naval...
Just sorry to interrupt you. For those of you listening at home, we've currently got pictures of Tel Aviv in fire. Well, there's a lot of firefighters there, people wading through debris. A car is on fire, engulfed in flames. In fact, it looks like an entire street is engulfed in flames there. We suspect that's from the latest strike by Iran aimed at Tel Aviv. Listen, I'd like to bring in another guest at the moment as well. I'm now joined by Director of IRGC Research, United Against Nuclear Iran, Kasra Arabi. Thank you so much for joining me, Kasra. I really appreciate you coming on the show this evening, especially at such short notice. I would love to get your reaction immediately to the Truth Social post. I don't know if you just heard it, from Donald Trump. He has declared he will continue to bomb Iran until he's achieved his goal, but also he has announced formally, but seemingly, that the Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, is dead. What's your initial reaction, Kasra?
Well, one of the most tyrannical dictators in the world, in history, perhaps, has been eliminated. This is a moment to celebrate. Iranian people are on the streets in Iran celebrating the elimination of their murderer. Khamenei has murdered, let's not forget, hundreds of thousands of Iranian civilians throughout his 3 decades of rule. His elimination is welcome, but Donald Trump, President Trump, is absolutely right to continue this operation against the Islamic regime. This regime is a terrorist regime. It is a regime that is no different to ISIS. Just look at what it did today, its actions today. It targeted civilian infrastructure, densely populated civilian areas in countries that were not even involved in strikes against the regime. This is a regime that massacred 40,000 unarmed civilians just a month ago on the streets of Iran. Tens of thousands have been detained or in the Ayatollah's prisons. They are being charged as muharibs in the regime's Islamic penal code. A muharib must not only be executed, but must be tortured prior to their death, including rape. Horrific, horrific violence. This regime is no different to ISIS. It should absolutely be removed. President Trump is absolutely right to continue this military operation. He has made it clear that he is going to provide the space for the Iranian people to reclaim their country and take back control.
Yes, thanks, Kasra. Totally understand where you're coming from there. He's also talking about the IRGC, military and other security and police forces. He's saying that they know, this is the President of the United States saying they no longer want to fight and are looking for immunity from us. He repeats a quote he said the other night. He said, now they can have immunity. Later, they only get death. Hopefully, the IRGC and police will peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots and work together as a unit to bring back the country to the greatness it deserves. What do you make of those words, Kasra?
Well, look, the IRGC is the most extremist, armed Islamist organization in the world. Its members are radicalized to the T. 50% of training in the IRGC is indoctrination, Islamist, extremist indoctrination. They don't view Iran as Iran. They view it as the Darul Islam, the land of Muslims, and they look at the outside world as the land of infidels, the Darul Kufr. This is an organization that is no different to the likes of ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Hezbollah, which it created. Members of the IRGC aren't going to put their weapons down. They're going to fight to the teeth. It is critical for the United States, for Israel, for the West, to target the capabilities of the IRGC, to dismantle the capabilities and change their willingness to fight. That is done through military force. By the way, this isn't a threat confined to the Middle East. The IRGC is plotting terror on British streets. More than 20 foiled terror plots in Britain by the IRGC were foiled by the MI5. They have created an extensive infrastructure in the UK where they are radicalizing British youth, Islamist radicalization, nurturing anti-Semitism. So the IRGC threat is not confined to Iran. It's not confined to the Middle East. It affects us here. And Keir Starmer still hasn't prescribed the IRGC. Keir Starmer has been silent in the face of their attempts to terrorize British citizens.
Absolutely. Agreed with you on that one there, Kazra. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I really appreciate you giving up your time to us. That is Director of IRGC Research, United Against Nuclear Iran, Kazra Arabi. Thank you so much for joining me. Jonathan, I'll come straight to you off the back of that. Strong words to describe the IRGC there, but I don't think he's wrong. This is a terrorist regime that has exported terrorism, not just to Britain, but has helped radicalise thousands of British men who have gone on to commit crimes. It is an evil organisation, and we shouldn't cry any tears over the loss of it today, should we?
No, of all the things that are happening today, the thing that I shed the fewest tears for is the things that happened to the Iranian regime and their outliers. I have no sympathy for them whatsoever. I will not defend them. I think it's quite possible to hold that view and still to condemn wholeheartedly an illegal war against Iran, which, as we've already seen, in less than 1 day has already claimed up to 200 lives. Those people did not ask for this war and they did not deserve to die. And I don't see, and we always have this double standard where we kind of think that it's just a price worth paying to see brown people basically be killed in a way that we would never allow if we were talking about a war on our own doorstep.
Absolutely ludicrous.
It's
totally ludicrous to make this about race tonight. No, this is nothing to do with race. This is to do with a terrorist regime that has spread its tentacles around the world. It has funded Hamas. It has funded Hezbollah. You could argue that the war in Palestine at the moment wouldn't even be happening if the Iranian regime had fallen decades ago like it should have done.
Alex,
that's the problem.
If there was...
It's got nothing to do with race.
Of course it is. Of course
Absolutely
it is.
Wrong.
In the same way, in the same way that there are many, many people who find Israel's government completely monstrous and reprehensible. But that does not justify attacking Israeli targets where civilians are put in harm's way. And if there had been 200 Israeli civilians killed today, it would, it would not be legitimate to say, well, it was a price worth paying to take out these Israeli targets that were sending bombs to Iran. That would not be justifiable. That is simply the point I'm making. It is not worth taking those civilians' lives to achieve those aims.
You are sitting on a panel with an Iranian, Iran-splaining at him, as so many of the left are today. The left is.
This is one Iranian
Green
person.
Party.
One Iranian. Jane, are you seriously suggesting that that you are not allowed to hold a different point of view about a point of international law when there is someone from that country who holds a different view? That's a completely nonsensical argument. We have different opinions. I'm not telling him how he should feel about Iran. I'm not explaining to him anything that's happened in Iran. I'm saying respectfully, I have a different view about this particular military campaign. I hold the same view about you as about the Iranian regime.
Okay. The thing I would say is World War II intervention wasn't about race, wasn't about color. When France was occupied by the Nazis, we didn't care about whether they're white, whether they're brown. It was a regime which was an occupying force. It wasn't from the French people. It was an occupying force, and it was completely justified, completely legal in my view, for US, UK, and USSR to attack the Nazis. The thing is, the situation is you're assuming that the government in Iran is a legitimate force, as a sovereignty. It's not about that. It's an occupying force. When they bring Iraqi terrorists from their Iraqi militias to kill Iranian people, how can we say that's a legitimate government?
It is.
The problem that here we have is when you see millions of people go out in Tehran after Crown Prince said, and protesting is not the same as 1 million people in London or 1 million people in England. Each person that is going outside, they're risking their lives. And the reason, and the evidence is so many of them are recording videos of themselves saying, if I died, then this is what I want for my country.
I just want to read some news that's coming in here. We believe around 21 people have been injured after the attack on Tel Aviv. That's according to Israel's ambulance services on X there. So that attack, those missiles that you saw land in Tel Aviv, which we've been showing you footage of here on the screen, which engulfing it in flames, of course, has unfortunately injured many people. Mike Parry, over to you. I guess, realistically, this has engulfed so many countries now. We are talking about an international response necessary to contain this from spreading into what could easily be, and many people have said this for a very long time, a world war.
Yeah, well, it is a world war because Iran spread their tentacles around the world. So anybody in a civilized country must support the action that the US and Israel have taken today. And get back to Jonathan's point again, the reason why this is happening is because in the constitution of Iran, they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth.
Israel launched the first attack. He launched the first attack.
Hang on, Jonathan, don't you accept Iran do not want Israel to exist? They think that all Jewish people and the state of Israel should be wiped off the face of the earth.
When have they ever said that? Sorry. When have they
shout over each other?
Of course, Israel have to defend themselves at every turn. Israel's the only democracy in the Middle East, and yet they are permanently under threat.
That's a nonsense.
Permanently under threat.
OK, listen.
I will tell that to the Palestinians in the West Bank that it's the only democracy in the Middle East. That's a completely ludicrous thing to say. Where does it say in the Iranian constitution that all Jewish... Do they want me to be dead as a Jewish person? Do they say that explicitly in the constitution, do they?
I said Israel, the state of Israel, and all Jewish people. Yes.
Right, so you're saying that
One is a time.
Are you actually saying that in the constitution of Iran, I'll have to look it up.
Okay.
That they say that no Jewish person should be alive.
I do. I say that. That's the belief in Iran.
Okay. That's in the constitution. Is that in the constitution?
That's what the theocracy of Iran believe in.